Hey, y'all, my name's Shane Sams. Thank you so much for listening to my podcast today. I really appreciate you giving me a little slice of your time and hanging out with me on the program. This is the podcast where I talk to some of the biggest authors, entrepreneurs, and experts on the planet Earth. Super successful people, so you can figure out, hey, what's making these people tick? What are they doing that I'm not doing? What are they doing that I could be doing to take my business, to take my dreams, to take my life to the next level? And I've got an amazing guest for you guys today. My guest today is the founder of socialmediaexaminer.com and the founder of Social Media Marketing World, one of the biggest and best conferences on the planet. The one, the only Michael Stelzner. Now, y'all, I started my online business journey, my journey as an entrepreneur back in 2012. And one of the very first people that I started following online was Michael Stelzner. Michael has always had his finger on the pulse of social media, online marketing, blogging, email marketing, and entrepreneurship. And I have learned so much from him over the years. Over the last couple of years, I've gotten a chance to hang out with Michael, get to know him a little bit better. And I am super pumped, super excited to bring to you today all of his knowledge, all of his wisdom, so that you can take your brand, you can take your business, you can take your entrepreneurship journey to the next level. Now, I always tell y'all to grab a pen and paper and take some notes, but you are really going to want to do that today because this is a densely packed podcast conversation. We are going to cover a lot of ground, and no matter where you are in your entrepreneurship journey, you are going to benefit from listening to this one. You might want to play this one 2 or 3 times because it is a good one, y'all. On today's podcast, Michael is going to share his wisdom on what it takes to be a successful entrepreneur. We're going to talk about what happens when your business falls apart, what happens when something negative or bad happens in your business. We're going to talk about how Michael Stelzner's business survived 2020, the big pandemic, like what happens to a live event company when live events shut down. What happens to a business when revenue goes to zero? How do you respond? How do you handle it? How do you get through the other side? Because, hey, we all know this. Entrepreneurship is a roller coaster, y'all. It's going to go up. It's going to go down. And we all love the up times, but we better be ready for the down times. And Michael's going to share his wisdom on that, how they went through the pandemic and how they are coming out the other side stronger in their live event business. We're going to talk about how to surround yourself with a powerful network. How do you go out and find people, mentors, mastermind members that can surround you and help you and that you can help as well? Michael and I both believe that a rising tide lifts all boats. But guess what? You got to get all those boats over to you and you got to tie them all together before you can rise your tide. So we're going to talk about that today, how to connect with amazing people, how to reach out to amazing people, and how to learn from amazing people so that you can figure out what it takes to get to the next level in your life. And then we're going to talk about what may be one of the funnest segments I've ever done on this show. We're going to talk about how to be an innovator. How do you spot trends ahead of time in your industry? How do you not only recognize what's working, but how do you figure out what's going to keep working? How do you say no to other things? This section was so good, y'all. I actually wrote down notes. I actually stopped and just started taking notes, and I'm going to print this out later, and I'm going to paste this right in front of my desk so that I can follow these best practices. Michael Stelzner and Social Media Examiner have always been ahead of the curve. From the outside looking in, it looks like they know things that are going to happen in the future before any of us have even figured it out in the present. So we're going to talk about 6 steps you can use in your industry right now to become an innovator, to see trends, to experiment with new things so your journey can go to the next level and your business and your life can grow. Plus, on top of that, Michael Stelzner is just a good dude, man. He's a good dude. He's a good dad. He's a good man, and I'm excited to bring him to you on the podcast today. So wherever you're listening in, hey, maybe you're walking on the treadmill. Maybe you're outside doing a walk. Maybe you're working out. Maybe you're at work just doing your thing and you're listening to the podcast. Maybe you're sitting on your couch. Either way, grab a notebook and a pen, take some notes. Maybe pour yourself a cup of coffee or a mason jar of sweet tea. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Three, 2, 1. Michael Stelzner, my friend. How you doing, buddy?
Pretty good, Shane. How you doing, man?
Dude, I'm not gonna lie. I just woke up from the best nap I've taken in a month.
Awesome. Well, I hope to add some electricity or energy to your awakenedness.
I'm awakening to Michael Stelzner. That's all I need in life. Is just to wake up to you, man. Dude, last time I saw you, we were on a roof in Nashville. How cool was that place, man?
That was really cool, dude.
I did not anticipate that when I got invited to that. John sent me an email and I was like, this sounds cool. Let's go to this. And that
I brought my oldest daughter with me, and I told her, I'm all, hey, this isn't just, this isn't like normally what these kind of parties are like. She's thinking like that's like the standard kind of
that's what we do all the time.
Conference party. I'm all, no, this is a little more upscale than normal.
It was crazy. It's like that meme where you got like 6 pictures and it's like what my mom thinks I do, what my kids think I do. Like that was definitely one of those my kids think I do all the time moments,
Great food, great conversation.
How did she how old your daughter again? How old is she?
19.
Yeah, and how did she, when she came out of that, did she come out of hanging out with a bunch of entrepreneurs?
Really cool. She thought it was really cool. She's like, yeah, this reminds me of your conference. That's what she said. It reminds me of your conference, Dad. And but I just told her, this is I said, this is what businesses do, right? Like when businesses are getting off the ground, they invite people that they think are influential to events, and they feed them and make them feel really good with the hope that a relationship will develop, right? And it's like smart marketing is what I told her.
Yeah, man. Relationships where it's all about, dude. My son, he's getting ready to turn 13, and he's just starting to taste the entrepreneur lifestyle. Like he's starting to realize that it's a little bit different around here than maybe at his friends' houses or something like that. And he's starting to dabble into the YouTube and dabble into the creation. We're getting ready to go see tonight. I just got tickets to go see Eternals, and he's starting to get into that world of like creation. And he's like, I'm like, yeah, that's content marketing, bro. They make a movie and people go pay a fortune to go see it, and that's why they have a box office of $300 million or whatever. So
that's crazy.
It's really cool seeing your kids watch you be an entrepreneur.
Yeah, sure. So
let me we'll back up to some other stuff, but I wanted to talk to you real quick about just the live event space real quick. And I know that man, I have always looked up to you, dude. I've always looked to you as a leader in like our space, the online entrepreneur world. And because you host the most baller conference, social freaking media marketing world. And I remember when the pandemic broke out, man, I was like, holy crap, I thought about you. I thought about Jared Easley. I thought about Pete. I thought about all my friends that own these big conferences, like, cause the conference world was your world and then it just disappeared. Right. So how are you bouncing back from that? How's everything feel now that there's another one on the calendar and things are going to happen again?
Well, first of all, we were blessed because our conference was March 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. And if it was a few weeks later, we wouldn't have been having the same kind of conversation. Yep. So
you were the last conference standing when everything went to pot, man.
Last big, 5,000 person-ish conference in America in the marketing world and entrepreneurship world, at least. And, it was it definitely didn't happen as we're recording this in the year 2021. So our revenue got completely eviscerated. The conference was the biggest chunk of the pie for our business. So there's nothing like a slow moving freight train that you hope, like we saw it coming, right? Everybody thought this pandemic was going to be over in 3 months when it happened. Let's be intellectually honest. We didn't think we'd be coming up on our 2-year anniversary, right? And certain parts of the world would still be in very difficult positions, right? Like certain kinds of businesses are still struggling as a result of the pandemic. But so we couldn't have it this year, and that meant our revenue pretty much just tanked. We did our best to plan around it and stuff. The good news, the upside is that we are coming back in March of 2022, and we've already sold, 1,500 tickets. So people are coming and they're excited.
Amazing.
Back to normal. Maybe not back to, the new normal, but yeah, we're optimistic that there's pent-up demand for people to still want to get together. And, we were at Podcast Movement together, and we saw, wasn't it Podcast Movement? It was, right?
Yeah. All I remember was that party. I don't even remember what conference I was at. I spoke. So it's just that party was so good.
I've been going to quite a few conferences in the last couple of months just to see what the vibe is like. But so many people were just excited to get back to this kind of an experience, because I think for so many businesses, physical events is the crux of their business growth, right?
Yeah.
So you think about anybody who runs a consultancy or an agency, they tend to speak at events and hopefully pick up clients, or they go to events and they network with people with the hope of picking up clients. And those people really, they got in trouble, and I'm excited to see it's coming back. So
yeah, man.
Yeah.
It's amazing. We signed a deal in January of 2021 with this live event company called Oxlos, where we speak, like they host it. It's like a kind of like the traveling, deal. They go different cities, same speakers, you give the same speeches kind of deal, right? Yeah. And the one we did in Tampa was amazing because we had like 2,400, 3,000 people, something like that. And they've already sold 3,000 tickets to the Fort Lauderdale one in December. Wow. So I can feel the momentum of these kind of events. Now, that's not a conference. It's just a one-day thing. You come in, you hear the speakers, you go home, but you can feel it. You can feel everything kind of rolling back into motion. And man, I don't know, like we're online entrepreneurs, there's social media, we podcast, we do things like that. But every great opportunity I've ever gotten has come from a live event. It's come from being in the room with other people who care enough to be in the room, right? And like, a guy like you that creates space like that for other people, and and then bouncing back, like I know there's people out there I know that gave up on their live event business. Right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, man. They just folded. So like as an entrepreneur in general, we all fear that what if everything goes to zero, right? Like what was your mindset to say, nope, we're not giving up. We're going to bounce back. We're going to get through this. It will come back eventually. I remember my buddy Grant Baldwin told me that. Like, I'm a speaker. I teach speakers. All the speaking industry's gone, but it's going to come back. It's been here 100 years. It'll be here for 100 more years. How do you get through that? The ultimate depth of revenue to zero. Like, what was your mindset during that?
Well,
were you prepared?
I did have a special podcast episode just after the pandemic where I kind of went live and I talked about. Well, I recorded actually with my friend Marcus Sheridan, and I think I also might have gone live and turned that into a podcast. But what I told everyone, and I'll tell everyone now, is this isn't the first time that the world has experienced a crisis, right? I mean, in 1999, you and I are old enough to remember 1999. The world thought Y2K was going to happen and everything was going to shut down. Remember?
All computers stopping at the same time.
I literally filled my bathtub with water because I thought that the pumps weren't going to work to get water into my house, right? And everybody was preparing for the inevitable, right? Then, of course, we had 9/11, which was a monumental shift for a lot of people. We got through that. Then the market crash of 2008, we got through that. So what I explained to everyone is that if you don't plan for change, then you're stupid because there's always going to be change. So the first thing you need to know is that we will get out the other side of this, right? And if you panic, then you're in trouble, right? So the best thing you can do is be optimistic and look for opportunities. I also explained that it was during these times that some of the biggest innovations in the world were born, okay? And I went through all these different companies that did not exist before these situations happened, but came into existence after these situations. Like right now, we are in the midst of a massive innovation as a result of the pandemic, which is multi-level, but crypto is one example. Yep. Web 3.0, the metaverse, all this stuff is coming into being because of the pandemic. We have fast forwarded rapidly, like people that were living in the non-internet age are now been forced into the internet age, right?
Yeah, man. People at my mom's age are working on the internet now. It's like, what is happening around here, man? We've been Zooming for 10 years and everybody's catching up. Now there's 100 million Zoom people running around.
Everybody's ready for a camera at any moment. They should be, because that's the new normal, right? So, today, in hindsight, looking back, I think the lessons we as entrepreneurs need to learn is that we need to have savings, right? We need to store, we need to be like Joseph was in Egypt, right? We need to store away because the famine will eventually come, right? And that's exactly been my mentality. I was a saver and I still am a saver. And as a result, I was able to keep all my employees. I didn't have to lay anybody off. I didn't have to cut any salaries. I did have to cut expenses, and some of that was with contractors, which were seasonal. But the moral of the story is I kept my people. I took care of my people. It was really, really important that they felt safe and secure. And then I tried a lot of things, right? And they didn't work. Some did, some didn't. But there's no better time to try something new than when you're forced to try something new.
When your back's against the wall, you're going to get really innovative. I remember my pastor, he texted me and he was just checking on everybody, and he was like, because it was the day like the governor of our state said everything was shutting down. And our governor was really, really straightforward. And he came on the camera and was like, look, I know the words out of my mouth are going to make some of you unemployed. And I was like, just to hear that out loud was the most surreal moment of it was like that John F. Kennedy moment, the landing on the moon moment, right? So he texted me, he goes, you guys going to be okay? And I looked over at Jocelyn and I texted him back and I was like, we are not going quietly into the night. I'll tell you that much, and we were just starting to throw mud on the wall at that point. And just to make sure we had something that stuck. We had cash reserve. We sold a business a few years ago and we actually were like, hey, what if we do the opposite of what we're supposed to do. We're the opposite of panic, the opposite of shark back. What if we go hire some people that just lost their jobs? What if we try those new products that we've been penciling out on paper and try some new things in our terms and conditions for our education company to help these teachers who are at home get all this new stuff for Google? What if we do a video about Google, Classroom or something? And we just went all in the other way, like tried to push the gas and like maybe steer around the madness instead of brake before heading headlong into the tornado.
There's this quote that I know you're familiar with, which is necessity is the mother of innovation. And it's 100% true. When you must do something is when you invent new things to solve problems. And there's so many things that, like, I took this as an opportunity to transform everything about my company, literally everything. I explored every single expense that we had, called everything into question, cut a lot of the things that were wasteful, and in the process said, hey, we can do this easier. And we just reinvented and reinvented and reinvented and reinvented. We are now so much more agile and so much more powerful because we did acquire employees along the way. I'm like you. I'm like, this is an opportunity.
Yeah.
This isn't retreat into the hole. This is go out and gather. You know what I mean? Go out and develop. Go out and like create content, and develop that tribe and that community. And I know that I'll look back many years from now and say we couldn't have gotten where we hope to be if it wasn't for the pandemic.
Amen. That's amazing, man. Well, let's go back in time a little bit way before the pandemic, way before all this stuff. What were you doing before you started the Social Media Marketing World Conference? Like, were you always in some kind of tech space?
I started Social Media Examiner, which is the parent company, in 2009. But if we go back before that, in the 90s, I was wrongfully terminated. So I went out and started my own business. And I was a gun for hire, a marketer who was a writer. And I helped businesses figure out how to translate their technical gobbledygook into language that everyone else can understand.
Interesting.
That means I met with engineers and I helped the sales crew have the right materials to be able to communicate in a way that they could to the customer, right? Because the engineers don't ever speak the same language as the customer does. So eventually,
right. My father-in-law is an engineer. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. Love me some engineers, but they need translators. So I was the translator and I worked for a lot of big companies as a contractor. Eventually wrote a book called Writing White Papers and worked with a lot of companies that people here are probably familiar with, like Microsoft, FedEx, and Motorola, and all these other companies, and helped them create these things called white papers, which were these persuasive yet educational documents, kind of the big brother of the ebook, if you will.
Right.
And did that successfully, and was very well known in that space as a writer, as a copywriter. And then in 2008-ish is when social media started to kind of get a little bit more popular. Back then, it was pretty much just Twitter and Facebook. And I decided to secure the domain Social Media Examiner on a whim. I was able to get it. I immediately registered a trademark thinking San Francisco Examiner was going to sue me because maybe they might own the rights to the word examiner. They never did.
Right.
Started a blog and it took off. And the rest is kind of history. So that's good
foresight, because like just buying a domain and doing stuff with it. And like, I remember like in 2004, a little bit before that, maybe 2001 or two, I remember there was this like website called Hot or Not. And it was like all the college kids were looking at it and checking it out. And I bought a bunch of dating website domain names. Like I didn't know how to code. I didn't know how to do it. I just learned that you could. I remember seeing a commercial for something, GoDaddy, maybe that was what it was. And I was like, I'm going to do all this. Maybe I could build a dating website or something and make millions on the internet like these people. And I know what it was. It's like I saw something on like a tech commercial on the Super Bowl. And I thought, man, that tech company can, with that stupid domain name, they can afford a commercial on the Super Bowl. There's got to be some money in that. But I never did anything with any of them, But then you actually were like, I'm going to buy this blog and I'm actually going to do something with this. And did you come at it as a business at first, or you just wanted to talk about social media?
My main thing was writing, and I decided, because I was a writer, right? So there's the connection right there to the blog. So I had already developed a pretty big community. I had about 20,000 emails on my writing business's newsletter.
Nice.
I just decided to, in my writing newsletter, I started to talk about social media first, because people that were creating these white papers wanted to know how to promote them and distribute them. And if you remember back then, it was really easy to get traffic on Twitter and Facebook. You know what I mean?
Go viral, basically.
It was super easy. So I was essentially writing content to help marketers figure out how to get more people to read their ebooks. And then I finally secured the domain, since I had a big network of writers and I had helped a lot of journalists get out of journalism and into business writing, which was a huge upgrade for a lot of them in money. So I went out to a couple of them and I said, hey, you want to write for me for a little while? I'm starting this movement called Social Media Examiner. It's going to be totally free. And we published articles that just started taking off. And, basically in a matter of about 3 months, I had 10,000 email subscribers.
Wow.
In what took me years on my other things. So I kind of had the signal I was onto something here. Because
at that point, did you push everything to the side and like, all right, success leaves clues, hammer the nail, give me a hammer. I got to hammer the nail, and just went all in on it.
No, but I did realize that anything about social media was most shared on social media. So so there was something back then to that, right? Because everybody was trying to figure out how it understood it. Just like today, people are trying to figure out the new technology. So you write about the new technology, but in particular, because social media sites were, and back then we were dealing with sites like Delicious and all these sites that were aggregators and Dig, and we were always at the top. So I was there at the right time, although I felt late because there were already thousands of bloggers that were blogging about everything they hated about social media. What was going to be different with my blog is we were going to tell you how to use it. See, everybody else wasn't telling you how to use it. You had to pay them. So my distinct advantage was we're going to tell you how to use it for free. And where everybody else was just complaining about it and saying, hire me, I'll tell you how it works. We were like, nope, here's how it works. And if you want more, get your email address in there.
Were you blogging like once a week, daily, like prolifically? Like
every
how
day.
were you?
Every day.
That's it. That's the jam, man. When you do something at the beginning every day, even if you are a little late, all them other people slow down when they're in it for a little bit, and you catch up to them a little bit,
Well, the difference is I reached out to a couple of my friends and I said, would you be willing to write one article a week? And I reached out to 4 different people. And, I might be getting ahead of myself in what you're going to ask me, but I basically had this team of fire starters. Okay. Mari Smith was one of them, a gal named Denise Wakeman, who is big in the blogging world, a guy named Chris Garrett, who went on to work for Copyblogger, and a guy named Jason Falls, who is now just has a brand new book on influencer marketing. I reached out to them because I knew them. They were early in social. And I said, hey, would you be willing to be kind of my fire starter is what I called it. And I asked each of them if they'd be willing to write. Actually, it was once a month is what it was. Would you write once a month until there's nothing in it for you anymore? And then I was going to write twice a week. And so in the beginning, it was like 2 to 3 days a week, but I put a little thing that said write for us on the navigation bar. And out of nowhere, I had people coming in left and right wanting to write for us.
God, just by putting it out there.
Just by putting it out there. And I had so many people. It got to the point where my fire starters, after a couple of months, were kind of, they began to say, holy crap, this is taking off. I don't know if we want to help Mike anymore because he might be a threat to us, right? So
right.
it got so big so fast that I didn't need them as much anymore. But in the beginning, we all agreed that we were going to promote each other's stuff. So what that meant is we were going to all tweet every article that everyone else tweeted, right? So that's kind of how we got started. And these things don't work today, okay, folks. This is just how back then. And there was a gal named Casey Hibbard who I helped inspired to write a book on case studies. I wrote the book on white papers. I inspired her to write the book on case studies. Fascinatingly enough, her first name is Casey, Casey. But anyways, she did really successful with that book. So she agreed to write case studies for me for free. And she did it for like a year. So all of a sudden I was doing case studies on people that were successfully using social media to grow their business.
We've all had all these tactics in our business that worked for this year or that year or whatever, but there is a truth there of a rising tide kind of does lift all boats. And that like alliance mentality, like that's how like John Lee Dumas and Sam Parr and Jenna Kutcher and all those people, they had this little alliance where they all shared not just shared each other's stuff, but actually like promoted each other's stuff, like on their email list or had each other as guests on their podcast. And that if you can get you a little posse of about 5 to 10 people where you're all helping each other, it's not going to last forever because eventually when you hit it, you got stuff to do and you got to run your business, right? Everybody's got their own thing. But man, that is a truth. Like if you can create that group of peers that are at or equal to your level, and you do make that unselfish agreement of, hey, look, you help me, I'm going to help you. That's why we're in this. It's not just so I can win, it's so we all can win.
100%.
That does work. That does work. Like whether it's a guest on your podcast or an email, especially. Like I I actually love emailing my friends stuff to my list.
Cool.
Because they're my friends. Like, why would I not want to tell all my tens of thousands of other friends about their products and services if they can help them? And then they do the same thing, and everybody kind of grows, All right, so we got Social Media Examiner, we're blogging, we're killing it, and like this was like an emerging time. This is when all the big podcasters start emerging. All the social media, what do you call it? Apocalypse kind of settles down, and the rules of the game start getting laid out, like what Facebook will do, Twitter will do, whatever. When were you like, I'm just going to have a huge, amazing conference? Like, what was that decision like?
The story there is that the year was like 2012 ish. And I went to my friend Joe Polizzi's conference called Content Marketing World, which is a very small little event in a hotel in Cleveland, Ohio. And I persuaded him that I should be a keynote with Brian Clark up on the stage because, both Brian Clark and I had developed really big blogs. He was copy blogger. I was Social Media Examiner. So we were one of the first keynotes of that event. And there was like 400 people that showed up. And one of the things that I thought was really fascinating was Joe was calm as a cucumber, and I didn't understand how. So I'm like, Joe, why are you so calm? Because I figured, I put on parties before, and usually you're running around like a chicken with your head cut off. He's all, Mike, there are people called event planners. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? Wait a minute. I said this, Joe, are you freaking kidding me? Wait, you're telling me there are people that you can hire that actually do all the operational nightmare stuff? He's all, yes. And here's the person I'm working with. So at that moment, I started taking pictures and I started making notes, and I'm like, holy crap. I'm inspired. And it might have even been 2011. I can't remember. I said, I'm thinking, Joe, I think you just triggered something in me. And by the way, I had inspired him to start a multi-author blog, because we were on a panel together many years earlier. So he ended up starting this Content Marketing Institute blog because I inspired him to do that. And he inspired me to start my conference. So I came back. I started noodling around with some ideas. Then when I went to conferences, I had a completely different perspective. I was going to Blog World back then, which became renamed New Media Expo, and just started like paying attention from a different lens. So it was late 2012 that I decided, all right, we're going to start a conference and we're going to launch it in the spring of 2013. But I got creative. I said, I'm gonna call the conference Social Media Marketing World. Joe's the Content Marketing World, right?
That was your innovation, just the spin right there.
Yeah.
Like how to blast off of the Content Marketing World.
But the creative part wasn't the name. It was the podcast that I was going to start to promote the conference.
Oh, that's why you started your podcast, was for the conference itself.
The podcast was called Social Media Marketing. The conference is called Social Media Marketing World. Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
So I went out and hired this guy named Cliff Ravenscraft.
Oh, I know Cliff.
Of course.
Cliff.
And I told him I'm going to be your best student. So I hired him. I was one of the last solo clients he had back then because he wasn't doing that as much. And Cliff trained me, and I started this thing called the Social Media Marketing Podcast in in August or October of 2012. And I decided that I was going to try to get the people that were going to be speaking at Social Media Marketing World on the podcast. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense. Yes. So
yeah.
then everyone's like, did you like this podcast? We'll come see him live.
Right? Yeah. And then I also had seen this guy named Pat Flynn, who was doing a podcast, and I got inspired by him, and it turns out that Cliff and Pat and I are in a mastermind we've been in for like 8 years, and I'm walking distance from Pat's house. We've become good friends, but so I just got inspired and I just decided to go all in. And so these two things are distinctly tied at the hip, and they both turned out to be very successful. So the very first year we had the conference inside of a hotel in San Diego on the waterfront, and we had 1,100 people show up.
Crazy.
And I was told by everybody that I talked to that you can't get 1,000 people in your first year. It's impossible.
Yeah.
And I was freaking blown away that 1,100 people from all over the world came. And it was just, I knew we were onto something. It was something special. We kept,
how many were you expecting when you first sent it out? Like, what did you originally planned for?
Like 400 or 500. We just kept adding more speaking slots because we're like, we're going to have to get more rooms, hotel. Like, hey, can you open up another block of rooms for us?
Can you pull that divider out of the room we're in for the conference itself so we can have more speeches?
Yeah. But it was, it was crazy. It was awesome. And everybody, like, all of a sudden it was next level, right? Because there was never there were some tiny little events that were social focused, but they were like 100 people.
Yeah.
This was unheard of to have an event of this magnitude. And the fascinating thing was a lot of people that came to this event were event people from other industries. And they told me by the dozens that this is the best event they've ever been to.
Yeah.
And it's because I knew what I hated about every other event. And I just decided I was not going to do those things. All the other events I'd gone to were so unfortunately lame, for lack of better words. And they felt like pitch fests, and the parties were ridiculous, and you could never hear anybody else because they were always like rocking music and stuff. And I just thought, okay, if this is what events are supposed to be like, I don't want to do events. You know, it wasn't until I saw a different perspective and I saw that I didn't have to like do it all myself, right? Because that was the other side of it. I saw when a friend of mine did it, it's just like anything else. When you see someone you know accomplish something big, it becomes inspiring and it also becomes achievable. Does that make sense?
Totally, 100%. And your event's so funny because like we got started in 2012, and then about 2013 we had quit our jobs. In 2014, that's when we launched Flipped Lifestyle. So in 2015, we were hanging out with some friends of ours named Jill and Josh Stanton. And we wanted to have a little combined audience mastermind. Nothing big. We just wanted like to get, each of us get 10 people in a room. Let's have a really good mastermind. And we had met in San Diego, right? Maybe it was 2016. I can't remember. But like we had all met in San Diego. So we were like, let's do it in San Diego.
Why did you guys meet in San Diego? Just happened to be here?
No, I tell you what happened was, my story is very intertwined with Pat. I mean, I discovered Pat.
So you were out for an event for Pat or something?
He had one of those one-day BBs he was doing with Ducker.
Got it.
So we all were at the same one. We became really good friends, and we were actually doing like a lot of things together. So we said, let's just have an event together.
Yep.
And the original plan was to go to Social Media Marketing World and do the event like the weekend before or after.
Yep.
But we couldn't get babysitters for the actual Social Media Marketing World event for the whole thing, right? So we decided to go ahead and do the thing. But that event is so amazing. Social Media Marketing World is so cool. Like we actually, like Jill and Josh did end up staying for the event, and we had like one day. So we just like vultures circled the conference, and I probably met 30 people that are still best friends with me today at this event.
Were you guys just unconferencing technically?
We unconferenced, but Jill and Josh would go into events. They would come back out and hang out with us, and they'd bring like 6 people, and then they'd go back into a talk, and then they'd come back out. So one time they come out and they got Pat with them. Then they go back in. Then they come out and they got Michael O'Neill and all these other people with them. And like we just cheesecake factoried the event basically.
For people that don't know, unconferencing is when you can't afford to buy a ticket to the conference, but you can get to the hotel that everybody.
Or you can't find a babysitter except for lunchtime.
Yeah. But the good news about unconferencing is you do get a chance to have those serendipitous connections because all those people are in for this event where you would never get to see them. But it's funny because a lot of times people that unconference end up saying, I'm not going to miss it next time I'm going to buy a ticket. You know what I mean?
100%.
So,
yeah.
Have you ever been?
No, I have not. It's always on our calendar, and it's always like childcare, something else. And then, it's like, and it's so far away. Like that one is the farthest conference that we could go to.
Where are you based out of?
Kentucky. I'm in Kentucky. Yeah. And I'm an hour and a half from an airport too.
Yeah. I get it.
Yeah, man.
There's a lot of Kentuckians that come to see.
It's happening. I'm telling you, it's going to happen. It's going to be fine. Right. I have no doubt it's going to happen, man. One thing I've always respected about you, as long as I've known you, as long as I've followed you, is you guys are really, really good at being ahead of the curve, right? Like probably the best I know of everybody in my personal network or anybody that I follow of you just catch on to things quickly. Like you jumped into this social media thing, you jumped into this blog thing. You were out of the gate on Clubhouse, out of the gate on other of these social media. How do you guys stay ahead of the curve so well? And why does it always seem like you guys are like 2 months ahead of everybody else figuring things out over at Social Media Examiner?
Well, first of all, thank you for that. But there's so many things that we're not ahead of the curve on. But it is true that once we go in on something, it does tend to sometimes make a ripple. One of the things we're definitely not ahead of the curve on is TikTok, and Reels and Shorts and all that stuff, just because there's only so much you can do, right? Like if you're more of a company that produces highly produced videos like we do, or written word or spoken word, it's different than when you're trying to do like a 15-second video. It's kind of a paradigm shift. That's the one thing we've not been early on. So the key thing is that I am not just the founder and CEO of Social Media Examiner, but I'm also an analyst. So what I do is, first of all, I have a weekly news show. So I'm always analyzing the news that's going on in all the various industries we cover, like, Instagram, Facebook. I'm also on my podcast, I'm always bringing on experts, right? And they're telling me things, because that's my whole show is pretty much marketing experts. So I hear and ask questions all the time. We do a lot of survey research ourselves. So we ask lots of questions 2 times a year. So we'll ask our marketers like, hey, what are your plans in these areas in the next 12 months? What do you want to most learn about? So I kind of have a sense of what it is that my industry is interested in, because I have a pulse on the customers and on the non-customers, right? So I know what their struggles are. And so when something comes about that fits within our ability to create content and rides a wave, then we're on to something. For example, we were one of the first to do a docu-series back when we did The Journey. I don't know if you know what that is or not, but we basically had a cameraman in office years ago, and we basically were filming everything nonstop.
Like Gary Vee style, like just document everything you're doing, every person, everything.
It wasn't just me. It was but it was a story where it started with, hey, we're trying to sell tickets to our conference, and our goal is to get to here, join us along the journey. It was called The Journey, right? So we did it for 2 seasons, and we just documented every struggle we had, every ugly little thing. And our employees were the characters, and it was real. And even to this day, it's been years since we've done that. I go to video conferences and I still have people come up to me and say, I love The Journey. We published it on Facebook, and we published it on LinkedIn, and we published it on YouTube. So we were early in doing docu-series, behind the scenes stuff, right? Like now you think about like Undercover Billionaire and all this kind of stuff. Like this is exactly what now today is like, everybody loves that kind of stuff, right? So we were a little early on that. And the reason we were early is because in my mind, I'm like, okay, I think that there's something here that people would love to see, because people love behind the scenes stuff, right? I think story is powerful. So let's just fricking try this. It was a nightmare. I mean, it was so much work, dude. To produce a 7-minute episode of this thing took like 60 hours a week. It was ridiculous, because we had all the footage. We had to find a through line and a storyline. So we learned a lot there, right? With Clubhouse is one of those kind of things where, the pandemic was going on and everybody was stuck at home, and we were waiting for the world to open back up. And I just saw it as like an extension of what I was already doing with the podcast, right? It was like on demand, live experiences. And once I experienced it, I thought it was the coolest thing I'd ever experienced, because I was craving social interaction as an extrovert. My guess is you're an extrovert too. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, a little bit.
Sensing it, and it was fun and it was awesome. So I went all in and I started doing shows on there. But back in the early day when live video was a thing, I decided to start was called the Saturday Morning Social Media Marketing Talk Show. And Amy Schmittauer, who is now Amy Landino, Vincenzo Landino, and myself and Joel Com, we just decided to start it. You know what I mean? And then eventually it morphed into what we now have today, which is called the Social Media Marketing Talk Show, which is the longest running live show in the marketing world. Full stop. It's been going for like 6 years, Wow. And so it always starts as an experiment. So generally speaking, what we do is we try things, and then if they don't work, we shut them down. So it's not that we're early. It's that we're in the business of creating content with an intent. And we try new things when they come out, if it aligns with the talent that we have in-house, right?
That's amazing.
But looking into the future, I can tell you there's a whole bunch of trends coming. We can talk about it or not talk about it. But, it's just like when you're as focused as I am on industry data and trying to create, podcasts, multiple podcasts and articles and YouTube videos every single week, we track everything, right? So we kind of know what people are interested in, and just kind of we just kind of keep sharpening.
It's like sifting for gold with a little pan, right? Like you're just throwing the big dirt pile in and seeing what's left, and all the dirt washes away.
Most everything doesn't work. That's the point, right? So people only pay attention.
That's a great quote, man.
Most people pay attention only to what actually works, right?
And everybody's looking for the one thing that does, and that's where the frustration lies. Is most everything doesn't work hard. I got to read my notes over that section. Sometimes I just
everything doesn't work, but every once in a while you hit a home run, right?
That's right.
And it's not till you try what doesn't work and clear the bases that you're going to find what does work. You've got to fail your way to success.
Wisdom is flowing through the microphones now. We've hit the sweet spot in the podcast. I just wrote this down as this. I think one of the great things that's kind of precursor to this conversation we just had is surround yourself with amazing people, right? You're always plugged in somewhere, whether it's your team, your mastermind, your friends, your whatever. But I wrote down like one, Analyze weekly news trends like that. That's so easy in this day. Just go make Twitter lists of your people in your industry and stuff, like, right? So you analyze these trends. You're always keeping a pace with the news in your industry. You set up situations to talk to innovators like podcasters, right? It's not just you with a crystal ball. You're setting up opportunities to talk to innovators in your industry.
And I'm intentionally looking for new talent that fits those buckets. Does that make sense?
It's not just the same people over and over again. It's right.
Constantly new people.
Constantly new people.
Because you know why? Because the people that have been doing it for a while, eventually their candle burns low.
100%. Right?
Yep. And you've got to constantly look for new people. And the new people are hungry and they're excited and they're the next big people. And they're not going to forget you if you gave them an opportunity to be on the stage, metaphorically or physically. You know what I mean? And
100%.
I'm constantly looking for.
And then constantly researching your own data, seeing what works, surveying your audience, looking at your audience.
Stop what doesn't work, do more of what does.
That's right. And then this is the big one. This is the kicker, people. This is where Shane Sams always tells y'all: take action, be consistent, be prolific, be relentless, because you're gonna fail a lot here. You experiment. You throw mud on the wall and you figure out like what is sticking on there. And then that's what you focus your attention. And then say no to things that aren't working. So, man, this is a conversation we're having with some of our members right now. Like, guys, eventually you're going to know if it's not going to work. You can't be stubborn. You got to go on to the documentary thing was great, but then it was so much that there came a point where the time, the reward for time became not good. So you just went to another direction, basically.
The keyword here is experiment. If everybody calls everything they do an experiment, then you can't fail. It's impossible to fail when you run an experiment. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense.
And an experiment is either proves or disproves something, right? That's it. There's no such thing as fail with an experiment. So if you go into everything with experimental mindset that, hey, I think this is what's going to happen, and either does happen or doesn't happen, then as long as it was an experiment, then you feel no ill will shutting it down. There's no ego attached to it.
You're outcome independent at that point. It's just the experiment.
It was an experiment. That's the whole point. And guess what? Social Media Examiner was an experiment.
Incredible.
Social media marketing world was an experiment. This podcast was an experiment. But for these 3 experiments that I just mentioned, there were 100 others that are in the grave.
Yeah. We got some good stuff right there, man. That's what I'm talking about. So what I get fired up, man. Listen, I wake up every day and I feel like I'm cheating. I feel like the most blessed human being alive because, one, I think about this stuff because not just because we geek out about this stuff, but because I know that this helps me serve people better and it helps other people get served better. And like, I get to talk to people like you and Pat and I get to bring people like you and Pat to thousands of other people. And I just get chills whenever I get to. I'm cheating at life, people. I'm just telling you right now. I found the cheat codes. But what is next for Michael Stelzner, man? What is it time to just roar back out of the gates, go all back in, and double down on what you're doing, or what is next, man?
The big thing is the conference. Obviously, that's what we're focused on right now, and just reinventing. What does a conference look like in a post-COVID world, right? So that's our really, really big immediate next thing. We're really trying to grow the YouTube channel. So one of the things that I am experimenting with, and by the way, you can watch for this because this is coming. I'm going to be doing more videos where I am just talking to the camera and telling a story, and that's it. So literally, this is new for us, right? So we're going to set me up in my studio. Mitch, who works for me, who's my video guy, is going to film me. I am going to tell a story about the plight of the marketer. Okay. And I'm going to tell another one and another one. Every week, it'll be a story with some sort of a lesson inside of the story. And the benefit of this is that I will get a chance to get back in front of the camera and share some of the struggles and insights that I have gained through the medium of story. And I believe that this is a trend that a lot of other marketers could pay attention to, because in the midst of these stories, I'm going to be talking about social media marketing world in a way that will seem so natural. No one will even question it. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. Yeah.
So
you're embedding the message you're embedding the thing within the actual, it's like Inception. It's going along with the story where it's natural.
Part of the story. And that's the best way to talk about something that you want to ultimately get the world to pay attention to, is to embed it in the midst of a story. So this is something I'm going to be doing probably starting in December. You'll probably see them of 2021. And if it works, we'll have more people watch those videos, more people share those videos, and then that audio might work its way into my podcast. And it's just a new way for me to tell stories that I normally would tell, like Shane Sams, when I'm sitting next to him, next to a fire on a cool evening in Nashville, Tennessee, except I'm telling the whole world these stories. And I feel like there's something there. And I feel like people might actually find them very fascinating. So this is like one of the next big things I'm experimenting with.
Oh, man. Love it, dude. Listen, man, I can't tell you enough how much that I have loved getting to know you and that I respect you. And man, I am a big believer in watching the magician's hands. That's how I like to learn. I like to watch people that are doing great things. And you've always been doing great things. I know you're going to do even greater things in the future. You're a great business owner. You're a great family man. And I just really, really want to tell everybody out there, man, I respect the heck out of freaking Michael Stelzner, man. So tell everybody, man, where they can go find you, follow you, and do what I do, which is pay attention to everything that you're doing right now online.
Yeah, on Instagram, I'm Stelzner, which is my last name, Stelzner. And if you go to Social Media Examiner, you can find everything. You can find our articles. You can find both of my shows. You can find the conference. Maybe, just maybe, somebody listening here, maybe you can say, hey, when you see me in San Diego at Social Media Marketing World in March of next year, I heard you on Shane's show.
That's right, baby.
I'll be like, holy cow, that's so cool.
I got a bonus question here real quick.
All right.
So we're friends on Facebook. I'm always commenting on all your posts because you post some like really interesting questions and things like that. I notice you do something though. And I want to know if this is tactical because I've actually wondered this. You always comment on your own post immediately. Right? Like, is that an engagement thing or you're just trying to drive the conversation? Or is there a social media algorithm trick that I don't know about that I need to know about right here on the Shane Sams show? Like, why do you do that on all your posts?
Okay. I don't do it on all my posts, but let me tell you, sometimes I do it in the following capacity. So you cannot put a link to anything in the post itself on social because that's considered a negative attribute.
Like it kills reach, basically, if you do that.
Kills reach. So you're better off putting it in the comment. So if it's off platform. So if I'm talking about something, I'm not going to mention it at all with a link. I'm going to actually put the link in the comments. So that's strategic in that regard. In other cases where I just posted something like, I think I said something about what's your least favorite food in a GIF. You know what I mean? And I showed the throw up emoji. In that particular case, I put cheesecake in there because I just wanted to show people an example of something that most people would be like, what? You don't like cheesecake?
I hate cheesecake too, bro. I like it even better. Jocelyn doesn't like it either. I don't understand why people would put that in their mouth. I don't know.
It's like cheese is not meant to be on cake. It's meant to be on burgers.
Exactly. Come on, people. What are you doing out there?
Yeah. So generally speaking, if it's controversial, I will not add a comment right away because I don't want to stop people from adding their comments. So if it's a controversial thing, like for example, I said, what do you think? What would you rename Facebook is what I said. If you were Facebook, what would your new name be? I didn't want to say anything in the beginning because I wanted to see how creative people could get, or if I say, what do you think about blank? I'm not going to put my answer in there right away because then people, if they disagree with me, they're not going to put their comment in there. So I'm intentional. I only add a comment in there when it's a link or when I want to get things started and help people be creative. Otherwise, I do not add a comment right away because I know my opinion will skew how people react.
Amazing. Michael Stelzner, thank you so much, man.
It's been my pleasure, man. Enjoy that cheesecake.
All right, y'all. That wraps up my interview with Michael Stelzner. Man alive. There was some wisdom packed into that one, y'all. Hey, hit rewind on that one. Do we even hit rewind anymore? I don't think we hit rewind anymore. I think we just hit the button that starts the podcast over. But go back, listen to that one again. I can't wait till my editor gets it back to me, man. Kevin, listen, Kevin's out there editing this right now. This is going to make the podcast too. But bro, get me that one fast because I want to listen to it again so that I can take some notes because Michael Stelzner was dropping some amazing knowledge and some wisdom bombs on the podcast today. Make sure you go out and you support Michael over at Social Media Examiner. You need to get on his email list. It's one of the best emails that I get all the time in my inbox. I learn a lot from it every time I see it. And hey, head out to Social Media Marketing World. We'll drop a link to both of those things on the show notes so that you can check that out or grab a ticket. It really is one of the biggest and best conferences in the online business space, in the social media space. It is a densely packed place with a lot of successful people. And if you are in online business, if you're in the entrepreneurship world, if you use social media at all to grow anything that you do, make sure you check out Social Media Marketing World. Let's help it blow back up now that the pandemic is finally winding down, guys. Let's get back together. Let's support Michael. Let's support all these people out there that are helping us or creating space for us to unite together and improve as people and entrepreneurs. And hey, if you love the Shane Sams Show, if you love this podcast, man, thank you so much for listening. I really do appreciate it. This podcast is growing by leaps and bounds. We're getting bigger and better and more even amazing guests than we've had some good ones, y'all. And I want to keep bringing you access to these people. I want to keep having laid back conversations. I want to keep having mastermind level discussions with these incredible people that I know in my network. And I want to give you access to people that you may not get access to in this kind of environment on a regular basis. I'm going to need your help to do that, guys. If you love the show, do me a favor. Help me grow it. Go over and leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and write a little paragraph in. Tell me what you think about the show. Those reviews encourage me. They pump me up. They get me excited, and they help more people discover the podcast. Also, if you love this episode, give it a share on social media. Just real quick before you turn your podcast app off, hit that share button, grab the link, go put it on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, Instagram, LinkedIn, wherever you share stuff, and let your friends know about my interview today with Michael Stelzner or maybe another guest that you've loved on the podcast. And hey, the best way to tell people about stuff is to tell people about stuff. So next time you're hanging out at dinner, hanging out at lunch, maybe hanging out in your mastermind group on Zoom, tell them about the Shane Sams Show. Tell them about my interview with Michael Stelzner and encourage them to subscribe as well. As always, y'all, the podcast today is brought to you by flippedlifestyle.com, FLIPPED lifestyle.com. You know, I was not always an entrepreneur, y'all. I used to be a school teacher in Southeast Kentucky. My wife, Jocelyn, she used to be a school teacher. And after years of job losses and bad bosses, we'd had enough. And we decided to start, build, and grow our own online business. We started creating membership websites. Our membership websites were able to replace our income, help us quit our jobs, and we have been full-time, self-employed, location-independent online entrepreneurs ever since. It's simpler than you think, y'all. All you need is 100 people to pay you $50 a month to make $60,000 a year. Heck, 200 will make you $120,000. And that's what we teach over at flippedlifestyle.com. We have a membership community of hundreds of family-focused entrepreneurs from around the world who are starting, building, and growing online businesses together, using their own God-given passions, knowledge, wisdom, and experience to help other people out there on the internet to create a great living for their family, to change their family's future, to even build wealth and an inheritance for their children's children. We have a step-by-step process called the Flipped Lifestyle Blueprint, and it will show you exactly how we did it, how they did it, and how you can do it too. So if you'd like to start an online business, if you'd like to have an online income, if you'd like to find more time and money freedom in your life, head over to flippedlifestyle.com. That's FLIPPED lifestyle.com/free and try out our program for 30 days free today. All right, y'all, I got to get out of here. It is opening night at the movie theater. I got to go get my son. We're going to go watch a movie. We're going to live a little bit of that flipped lifestyle and have a great time this weekend. I'll see you back here next time. Until then, take action. Get out there. Be consistent. Be prolific. Be relentless. Experiment like old Michael Stelzner told you to do. Make an impact. How do you do it? You pick up your stone, you cast it out upon the waters, and you cause many ripples. We'll see you then.